Well, thank you for staying with us. It's time now for the news review, and in some 30 minutes, we'll be done with that. But right before I tell you who joins me in the studio, Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic always aids us, almost so we can bring you this newspaper review segment. And here's what they're offering you. If you're out there, they've been gracious enough, benevolent enough to say, come and let us screen you for your prostate if you're a man, and for your fertility issues if you're a woman. All you have to do is make tracks to any of their branches. Now, here in Accra, you can locate them at Spintex, opposite the Shell signboard. In Kumasi, Kronum Abuehia, behind the Angel Educational Complex. In Takra, the Anaji Estates. In Tema, Community 22. In Techiman, Hanswa, and the Siama and Zima. Their call lines 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. But that brings us to the start of the news review. I am pleased once more to be joined by former president of the Ghana Journalists Association in the person of, well, you know him, Afil Moni. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming, sir.
It's a pleasure.
Any topical issues that have occurred that you would like to get into? We'll definitely talk about the MPP and its flag bearer now, but any other topical matters that you'd like to bring to the fore before we kickstart?
There's a story in the Finder which says that the flood situation in the Volta region, in parts of eastern and northern regions will abate in the next 2 weeks. The NADBO, this assurance from NADBO that they bring the situation under control in the next 2 weeks, and this ignites hope that I think relief will come to the affected people. It has been devastating for the past weeks since the disaster occurred. So we pray that NADBO will double its efforts, and the spirit of benevolence will also intensify.
Right.
So that the victims will begin to enjoy life and normalcy.
Okay. Well, and I'm sure when you speak of the spirit of benevolence, you're also referring to individuals of goodwill, corporates,
yes,
corporate bodies, among others.
Yes.
One of what things I've been campaigning for is sanitary towels, sanitary pads, because like we've said here before, the monthly cycle does not end because a disaster has struck. It doesn't know a disaster, so it continues. And so as we contribute food, water, bedding and everything in between, let's also remember for the young girls, a lot of them in school, a lot of them in their teens, and it's that time of the month and they don't have the right hygienic gear.
I think the
so
media
let's do that.
also deserve fulsome praise for their advocacy in ensuring that the nation attends or responds appropriately to this disaster. This has been an example, a classic example of solutions-oriented journalism. So I use your platform to commend most highly all the media houses, especially your outlets, CTFM, Aduma FM, and a host of others. In fact, but for your consistent and comprehensive coverage,
Right.
I believe the situation would have been worse than what we experienced.
Of course, with our political leaders especially, if you don't get to see it like we've put it out, it's like Galamsey, poison for gold and everything. Once it's not out there like that, they also pretend to be working. They pretend to be doing something. But when it's exposed, then at least some action is brought.
Politicians always need prodding.
Anyway, so let's get into the papers now. I have the Ghanaian Times and Economy Times. What do you have this morning?
Daily Guide and the Finder.
It's a lean paper morning. I think that we could say we were on a diet.
The issues are not lean.
The issues are not lean. That's true. Okay, so I'll start with the Ghanaian Times newspaper. Let's build thriving blue economy. Veep appeals, and of course we are talking about our maritime, waters or our maritime interests. An exclusive interview on NPP presidential primaries. Vice President Dr. Bawumia's election expected. That's according to Alan Chamating. I'll get into that. Provisional voters registration exhibition ends today nationwide. National Security Health Minister summoned before Parliament Thursday. And you know exactly why. Then there's residents of 4 communities in Tamale protest bad roads. And Oli break stubborn in Swatreman. So Accra Great Olympics overcame a stubborn and Swatreman side to emerge 2-1 victors in their Bet Power Ghana Premier League match day 9 encounter at the Accra Sports Stadium yesterday. Oli always reminds me.
Oli is my local team.
Oli Konson.
International Bassa.
Oli Rosalinda.
It goes to just sumptuous. 2 classes goals.
Oli, some rebuilding in there. But Oli has faded, pal, because I remember back in the day.
Yes.
Oli Konson.
He won the league unbeaten in the 70s.
And they just let Hearts of Oak, come in. As far as Accra is concerned.
Protocol are struggling, and your Man U.
Yes, we are also. The issues are myriad. They are many.
And we hear that Zidane is on the shopping list of coaches.
For Man U?
For Man U, yes.
Well, we'll see. Eric Ten Hag has been efficient in certain ways and inefficient in other ways. And I think I was listening to a foreign outlet or some other outlet yesterday. It could have been actually Joy FM, where there was talk of the fact that as of this time, after this number of matches, is it 9 or so, last season, we had 18 points. And we are at the same, after 9 matches or so, with 18 points, you get it. But of course, the dynamics keep changing season after season. So we'll see what comes of that. But let's get into some of the crucial stories here. Page 12, 13. Let me do page 4 first, before I go to pages 12 and 13 for our reflection. The Ministers of National Security and Health, Albert Kandapa and Kweku Agyeman-Menu, are to appear in Parliament on Thursday, 2 days from now, to answer questions pertaining to developments in their respective sectors. Their imminent attendance upon Parliament, I don't know some of the nowadays, but anyway, their imminent attendance upon Parliament would be in line with an order issued by the second Deputy Speaker, Andre Siamo Amwako, for the two to brief Parliament on the alleged on the alleged military brutality in Garu and the closure of the renal unit of the Kolebu Teaching Hospital. We've spoken about those matters, rather forcefully. What happened in Garu, the military beating people, and then the renal department. So a few days ago, I actually did something extensive on Kolebu. After 5 months, there was a directive to reopen, still not reopened. People are, this is not virtually, people are literally dying.
The height of insensitivity, and criminality.
Criminality, you call it. And I agree with you. It's nothing less than criminality.
It's serious.
We're basically telling people, go and die.
Order. That's the dialysis unit should be opened, nothing happens. Following day, nothing happens. And for 5 days or 6 days.
It's now about 6 days.
The place remains shut. That is unthinkable. Totally unthinkable.
And we've interviewed some of these people suffering from kidney disease and all of that. And they are basically saying, we are dying slowly. We're dying slowly. Imagine that. Sometimes you see a dream, but feel for the other person. If you were the one in that situation, how would you feel? If it were your relative, your mother, father, grandmother, grandfather, child, spouse, how would you feel? It's like a death sentence.
Exactly, yes. Death sentence. Death sentence is not only heart-rending, but also so wrenching. Serious.
Well, we'll keep talking. Last Friday, I committed my entire blunt thoughts to talking about Kolebu, the road problem leading there, the renal department, faulty equipment, and still, I don't know, the CEO of Kolebu should also, take up some of these matters. Though some of them lie in the bosom of Kwesi Amwakwata, the roads minister, others lie in the bosom of the health minister. But Kolebu itself too must be, because we can't keep up like this. Let's Build Thriving Blue Economy VEEP appeals, and the Vice President Alhaj Dr. Mahama Bawumia has stressed the need for the present generation to leave behind a legacy of a thriving, sustainable and vibrant blue economy for generations to come. According to him, developing and sustaining a blue economy was not just an economic importance, but also a moral imperative as well. But I can also throw it back to you, Mr. Vice President, in other areas. You're talking about our water resources. What legacy is your administration, of which you are VEEP, leaving, for example, in terms of Galamsey and its pollution of our water bodies?
He's promised to prioritize the blue economy.
Promised.
When or if?
Promised.
Yeah, when or if he becomes.
I have gone long past the point of taking the promises of any politician, no matter where they are coming from. NDC, MPP, PPP, or the P's independent, seriously, in Ghana.
The industry
none of them,
the political industry thrives.
Neither one of them has proven to be people of what's the integrity who stick to their promise. None of them. Not one. I mean, some may do more than others, so you would always have some sort of standards, but not one of them. I take this with, the expression is what? A grain of salt or a pinch of salt. I'm taking it with 1,000,000 pinches of salt.
And unsurprisingly, confidence in politicians is on the wane, and our challenges on the rise.
You should have listened yesterday when, on the back of the presidential primary, we went to the University of Ghana. You should listen to what these young minds, and I salute you, Bame Kunedu, if you're watching this morning. I think I don't know whether she's in the school of law there, but she spoke eloquently. She's a thinker, and that's one to look at. There was this other gentleman, I've forgotten his name. I mean, they think through issues, and that's what university education, by the way, should do for a person. You shouldn't be half-baked. You should come out with a very holistic manner of thinking. You should be able to think through issues and address them. You should be rational.
Sure.
You know? And they were thinking through the issues and mentioning, points by point.
So politicians ought not take the electorate for granted.
They are taking these young minds for granted. But these young minds, someday will stun them and show them that we are not as foolish as you think. Look at the rate of unemployment in the country. So for people like that, when they are done with school, where are they going? Unless you're connected to someone who is connected to someone who knows someone at the top, where are you going? Where? I'll wrap up with this one and then you can come through. There was a story on Gaza, I may add that. Vice President Dr. Bawumia's election expected. The founder of the Movement for Change and an independent presidential candidate for the 2024 general election, Mr. Alan Chamating, shared his views on the just ended NPP presidential primaries. That saw the election of Vice President Dr. Mahama Bawumia emerge the new presidential candidate for the ruling NPP. The Q&A session, exclusively with the Ghanaian Times, saw the former Trade and Industry Minister sharing his views on the just-ended primaries, particularly, okay, so let me just cut to it, because this is a lot of verbiage without the meat of the matter. So he says, the selection of Alhaj Bawumia is not a surprise to any political watcher. It is the widely anticipated outcome, and therefore it is no news. I have been saying all along that the electoral process had been skewed in a particular direction. That is what we saw on Saturday. Then he said, the question is posed, what about the margin of victory? Surely 60% is a clear indicator. It was actually 61.47%. The answer, if it is an indication of favor or popularity in the party, then the huge gap between the widely publicized expected margin of not less than 80% and the actual tally of 60% appears to indicate otherwise. Mr. Kennedy Agyapong's strong showing, even in areas where he lost, points to the likelihood that the chosen candidate lacks broad and natural appeal. Moreover, and this is how I'll wrap, it is clear from the results that the voters responded to Ken's call to Alan's supporters to vote for him, which also shows Alan's continuing relevance amongst the rank and file of the NPP. For example, the two regions of Volta and Central, in which Alan, without a doubt, is recognized as the powerhouse, voted overwhelmingly for Ken. Did you see Ken performing so well, though?
Ken has been a grassroots politician, and he demonstrated his connection with the grassroots. And in terms of resources, he's also not a pushover. And so Ken leveraged his resources and his grassroots appeal to make the dent he did in the primaries. So I'm not surprised that Ken came out well in the primaries, and the narrative continues to shape around him as someone who has stood against the so-called establishment candidate and emerged admirably. So Ken now is a factor in MPP.
They said he would struggle to get 20%. He got almost 40.
Almost
37
yes.
plus percent.
Yeah.
Almost 40%.
Yeah. So very, very significant. Very, very significant. And in this interview, Alan is still bristling with confidence that he'll be the first independent candidate to occupy the most consequential office in this country as president. And he's entitled to his own opinion, but we all know that it's not within the bounds of possibility for...
It's not?
It is not. Sometimes
is it within the bounds of possibility for any independent candidate at this point in time?
Not now.
Not now.
Not now.
None of the independent candidates.
No.
None of those who likely will come forward.
No. Benin experimented and it worked in Benin, but we are not yet there. We are not yet there.
And finally, I just have to wrap with this. South Africa recalls all diplomats from Israel. And South Africa says it is recalling all of its diplomats from Tel Aviv following Israel's intense airstrikes on Gaza on Sunday night. The bombardment was one of Israel's heaviest since the war began a month ago. According to Gaza City's Al-Shifa hospital, about 200 people were killed. South Africa's government, which has long been a vocal supporter of the Palestinian cause, staunchly condemned Israel on Monday. And that is the instance. Some have referred to what is happening there as the largest open-air prison in the world. South Africa as well, having suffered apartheid. Some have likened what is happening there to some form of apartheid. But the Israelis also have their population to defend. And on the back of what Hamas did, obviously, it wasn't going to rest on its
within the bounds of proportionality.
And that is what I was coming to. Recently, Biden also said that it's only a matter of time, maybe the next few weeks, before support starts eroding for this heavy, artillery bombardment of the Palestinians. And so because of the human, the civilian casualties. So I think both sides must look at ways of ending this. You slap me, I slap you back, maybe twice, but how do we ensure that at some point, some reasoning can come
America
to this
is so key in securing a ceasefire in the whole murderous madness we are witnessing in the Middle East. But America also sides with Israel on the ground that say if there's a ceasefire now, it will allow Hamas
to rebuild, regroup, and come back at them. So that's the tricky part. Because you see, we want this to end as soon as possible. No one wants to get there. But at the same time, if they do, the possibility of Hamas regrouping and coming back to hit harder is also there. So it's like a catch-22 situation. You're caught between the devil and the deep blue.
And Israel is also insisting that all the hostages must be released before any talk of ceasefire will be considered.
I mean, it's tricky, but I wish... Well, you see, I would think it logical that Hamas just let the hostages go so that this can end. But you can also, from a security point of view, you can also think for them, seeing that, okay, if we let all of them go, we have no leverage, and these people have promised to wipe us out. So if we let them go, then they can just come in, bombard us, and then leave. So it's negotiation.
Negotiation,
honestly. Negotiation. Let's get into the other papers.
Bawumia will whip Mahama. That's the lead story in the Daily Guide, and that's Akufo Addo speaking, and he's confident that the flag bearer of the NPP, Dr. Bawumia, will give Mahama a showdown, so to speak.
You know what's interesting? The president, when he went to Odo, you remember, instead of saying Neil Ante Bannerman, he said Neil Ante Bannerman. Bannerman lost. He went to Asin North, did the same thing for the candidate. The candidate lost. I don't know about this one, but let's see whether the president will be much better of a predictor this time.
And it will be interesting to see how the two sort it out in 2024. And Bawumia is being touted as consigning to the dustbin of history the so-called anachronistic image of the NPP, and he's also the first northerner to lead a party, and also a Muslim. But I'll be hesitant that to advise that they should use that as a weapon or as a campaign tool.
Right.
To enhance the fortunes of Dr. Bawumia, because we should leave out religion in this whole campaign. Allow the two to compete on their competence. And many are those who see Dr. Bawumia as being held hostage by his inflated rhetoric and contemptuous ridicule of Mr. Mahama as incompetent. And he was touted as an economic messiah, but the state of our economy, the bitterly bitter cost of living crisis.
When you say, they'll tell you, oh, it would never have happened if it hadn't been for COVID and the Russo-Ukrainian war. Again, whenever I buy stuff, I look at the number of taxes on there. This country, we pray.
Yeah, so God listens and answers prayers. So we should be tenacious in our prayers and hope.
And of course, he was the one advocating for moving from, in fact, he said that they would move the economy, transform the economy from taxation to production. Today we have some of the worst tax regime we've ever seen.
The explanation would be that the conditions dictated.
How well?
That certain, and the World Bank too was also IMF.
The World Bank, IMF, when we're spending, did we know we were digging a hole for ourselves?
And overspending is another issue.
That's why I think, regardless of where you're from on the political spectrum, you should choose your words carefully when you try to tease and, just watch it, because someday
it is a huge lesson. It's a huge lesson, because what you say will come back to haunt you. And we pray that. But you can trust the electoral machinery of the MPP to deliver when least expected.
Yeah.
And interestingly, two parties are equally matched in terms of popularity and support base. In every election, they garner 40%. So let's see what happens to
the 20% in the middle.
20%.
But I hear the 20% is widening. More and more people are becoming discerning. I'll not simply vote NDC because I'm from here, or because of this, or because I'm from the north, or because I think I like. No, what is he promising? And others are also saying, I'll not vote MPP simply because I'm from that part of the country, because they've selected a northerner. So what? I had people send me. So from both ends, people are becoming more discerning. And that is exactly where we have to get. Because the wider that middle grouping, that average or median grouping, the better for all of us, so that people can actually sift through the issues. What is the wheat? What is the chaff? Throw away the chaff and go for the wheat.
So I expect the media to employ the strategy of sorting. Sorting, we bring out the strengths and weaknesses of the candidates for the people to make informed choices at the polls. Because democracy goes beyond performative act of voting in every 4 years.
Right.
So we need to purify democracy, and this can happen when we educate our people to make the right choices. And the Finder lists with YEA making 16,000 jobs available, and creation of jobs should be at the center, should be at the front burner of every regime. And the YEA, we are told, is making strides in job creation. The media ought to follow up and ensure that the YEA matches its promise with action. The finder also has this story about Bawumia making blue economy inclusive in the MPP manifesto, and should fate smile on him, he also prioritized the blue economy. ECG, yesterday we were told the ECG has begun an exercise to audit all meters, and let's pray that the right thing will be done so that ECG generates as much as it can to help improve its services, because it's one thing generating and also improving services. The two should go in tandem so that customers will have value for money. And yesterday, we also have a story on the front page quoting the First Lady of the Republic, Mrs. Rebecca Akufo, and the story on page 8 of the Finder. And the story says, the First Lady, Mrs. Rebecca Akufo, has called for increased support for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics STEM education for girls. She said that during her visit to the African Science Academy, a girls' only STEM-focused academic institution in Tema. Her visit was marked with several activities, including a tour of the academy's facilities, demonstration of students' projects in robotics, and interactions with the First Lady. I think this is a good move. The Education Minister should be credited with sharpening his focus in this area. STEM also holds a key to bringing about a revolution in our education system. So we calling for more STEM initiatives so that as many of our young boys and girls you exhibit innovative spark so that our economy grows in all dimensions. And we also have a story in the Finder which says NPA to begin bitumen regulation in January 2024. The National Petroleum Authority has announced plans to introduce comprehensive regulations governing the importation, storage, processing, and marketing of bitumen in Ghana, with regulations set to take effect in January 2024.
Well, when you go to myjoyonline.com, there's this story. KPMG predicts doubling of Ghana's growth rate in 2024. But quickly to wrap with Economy Times, that newspaper, avoid wood fuel to protect health and save the environment. That's according to the NPA. Ghana's fiscal position worsened in 2022. That's according to an ISA report. And promptly set up local credit rating agency, KPMG, to government. I don't know whether that will be the solution, though, because in the end, there are some recognized global outfits like the Fitch, like the Standard & Poor's, that businesses or people willing to invest their money would want to look at, not necessarily your foundling or fledgling credit rating agency. It's good to start it, but whether it will come with that clout that will convince, creditors, that's another matter altogether. 2024 budget to focus on jobs, economy, expansion amidst tax review calls by businesses. In fact, there's this story where, in fact, there have been those calls. And then reduce prices to make life bearable for consumers. That's the Trade Minister, Mr. Kwabena Tahir Hammond, popularly known as KT Hammond, the Minister of Trade and Industry, has implored members of the Chamber of Commerce and Industry and other business owners to reduce their prices and help make life a little bearable for the consumer. He said this was for the sake. Of their corporate social responsibility to their consumers in the country. But Mr. KT Hammond, if you are struggling to break even, if the cost of production, the cost of importing the materials, raw or otherwise, is that high, you expect them to reduce their prices. How are they going to do it? Which businessman gets into business to incur losses? I'm sorry, sir. Final words? It's a good thing to reduce the prices, but is it possible for them to reduce it? Look at the tax regime. Look at the cost of everything. Look at the dollar rate. The dollar is past 12 again. The pound is almost 15. And you're saying reduce it. Is it magic? Do they wave a wand and reduce it?
And there's an element to who take advantage of
There are.
system to make inordinate profit. So maybe this appeal goes to them too.
Ah, well.
Yeah.
You remember when Katie Hammond said there are a lot of young people bearded coconut heads. So maybe, who knows, maybe I'm just a coconut head. Anyway, this is how we cap off the news review. Right before we get into sports, this segment always brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. They're offering free services to males and females. Prostate screening if you're a man, fertility screening if you're a woman. Just reach out to them at any of their branches. Here in Accra, at Spintex opposite the Shell signboard. Kumasi, Kronum, Abwehia, behind the Angel Educational Complex. Takrade, Anaji State, that's where you can locate them. Tema, they are in Community 22. There's the Chiman Hanswa and the Esiama and Zema branch as well. Call them on 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Sports is up next on the AM show, followed by our big stories. Do stay.